Hey guys, good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Thursday, February the 27th, 2025. And it was an amusing day yesterday. Eggate, wasn't it? Chris Eubank Jr. and Benn. Wow. I sort of did see a little bit of this before. I did the walk yesterday, but I had a lot to talk about, so I didn't mention it. But I had a bit more of a look into it after I got home and saw all the footage and everything else, and the interview with Eddie Hearn and Ben Shalom. And look, never a dull moment in boxing, is there? It was quite bizarre. Eddie Hearn alleging all sorts of things that Eubank's camp knew all about it, and it was obviously it was pre-planned because he had it in his pocket. But you could see that Chris Eubank, he was just waiting for that right moment. They were face to face, and look, I'm not a big fan of either of these two fighters, but I don't think Benn sort of did what I sort of wanted him to do. It's okay to be aggressive and in his face, and they've had a lot to say about each other, but he was completely innocent in the whole thing. He was just standing there doing the face-off, and you could see Chris Eubank Jr. just sort of leaning forward, and he was sort of trying to goad Benn into saying something, I suppose just to give him the excuse to whack him in the face with the egg. But he got a little bit impatient. They got a little bit too close, and then bang. And geez, the noise it made, I mean, I knew what had happened before I watched it, so I knew what was coming. But if I hadn't have known what was going on or what had happened, I would have thought he'd been hit in the head with a glass or something. It was a really loud cracking noise, and the reaction of everyone was, what the hell has he just done here? And then there was pandemonium. Look, there was probably going to be pandemonium on the stage no matter what happened, whether there was the egg or not, because they just hate each other so much. And I think both of them almost sort of get off a little bit on getting into each other. So, as I said, I think it was always going to happen. But when it did go off or cracked or whatever it is that he hit after he hit him with the egg, I think it was Eddie Hearn actually shoved Ben Shalom. You can sort of see that in the background. He pushes him, and they did do the interview afterwards though. But geez, Benn was not happy at all, and the look on his face was, there was nothing manufactured about that. He was pissed. And I think if they had actually let him go, then he would have really tried to rip into Chris Eubank Jr. But look, Eddie Hearn called it a bitch move. I tend to agree, although I think we're going to see more shenanigans between these guys. I think going forward, you think they won't be allowed to be that close no matter what happens going forward in any of the press conferences or weigh-ins or anything like that. Because you would think that if they were allowed to get close, there might be some retribution. And I don't know what it would be from Benn. But let's just hope both guys get a good talking to, understand that in the end, above all else, they are professionals, or supposed to be professionals, and we get a good fight on April 26th. And you can sort of see the stark difference in size too at this early stage. I mean, at the moment, Chris Eubank Jr. has probably got, 10 to 15 kilos on Benn, you would think. What does he fight at? 168. So it's about 20, or maybe 10 kilos he would have on Benn. So I still think Benn actually beats Chris Eubank when they do fight, if they do fight. If we actually get to the starting line between these two, because I think anything is possible in the lead up to it. Of course, they were supposed to fight, 2-3 years ago, when Benn was found to have performance-enhancing drugs or whatever in his system, and it was cancelled at the last minute. But look, I don't think it's a big fight in the scheme of things, but I must admit, I am sort of looking forward to it a little bit as far as English boxing goes. Now, as an Aussie, I couldn't care less, or a world boxing fan, I really couldn't care less about who wins and who loses. But I think if you're an English fan, this would really hit home. This is sort of mundane green sort of stuff, isn't it? So I think it'll be good over there. And what are we? 2 months away? What is it? April 26th, isn't it? So yeah, we're about 8 weeks away, so still plenty of time for lots of things to happen. But it was very controversial at after the press conference. As I said before, they did interview Eddie Hearn and Ben Shalom. Ben Shalom was interviewed first, or being interviewed first, and was quite I thought, quite calm and quite measured in his responses, and was adamant that he didn't know what was going on. And then Eddie Hearn came over and sparked things up. Ben Shalom, to his credit, stayed calm, but Eddie Hearn, in his way, I mean, he has a unique way of putting a spin on words, does Eddie Hearn. But he did say, well, he thought it was a bitch move. He thought that Eubank's team knew all about it, and he said that he thought Ben Shalom knew about it right while he was standing there. So it was entertaining while it lasted, but geez, what else is going to happen in the 8 weeks leading up to the fight? And you never know, I might even buy the fight. It'll probably be on DAZN anyway, free. But they're talking about, I think the stadium it's in holds 70,000, and I don't think it's going to be big enough. If you can believe that. That is just nuts. And this is why, getting a little bit off subject here, this is why I want some of these big fights to be back in either England or the States, preferably Las Vegas, to get these big fights happening again. I love the Riyadh season stuff, but let's face it, it just does not have the same appeal. Now, maybe it's just me at my age. I don't know. The new age probably don't know any better. But I don't know, just the fact that we've got a big fight at, I think it is at Tottenham, I think it might be Tottenham Hotspur Stadium or whatever it might be, 70,000, and they don't think it's going to be big enough. And imagine the crowd on the night. It'll really bring back memories for those that lived through the Eubank and Benn senior fights. So that should be great. And also, obviously, Canelo and Crawford in September at the Legion Stadium in Las Vegas, probably 50, 60,000 people there. That's sort of what I long for. And I know it's all happening in Saudi Arabia, and I think it's fantastic, don't get me wrong, but geez, isn't it great to have a massive fight in England? And how, look, again, the Riyadh season stuff's been great, but how good would it have been to sort of have Usyk and Fury in Wembley Stadium? And who knows, we still might get Joshua and Fury at Wembley Stadium, or Dubois and Fury, or whatever it might be. Actually, I'll get to Dubois in a second, because it looks like he's going to fight Usyk. Worst kept secret in boxing, of course. But I did see also, just speaking of Chris Eubank Jr., Billy Joe Saunders, he's conqueror from about 10 years ago, is apparently back in training looking for a comeback, and he would like a rematch with Chris Eubank Jr. if he gets past Conor Benn. Now, I doubt that would probably happen, because Billy Joe Saunders is probably about 30 kilos overweight at the moment. And not just that, well, if Chris Eubank Jr. wins, the odds are he will be on the Canelo hit list for 2026. Now, last night in Sydney, I think it was, I'm not sure, I didn't watch it, but Tyson Pedro had a 7th round knockout to claim is it the WBC international title. Now, I just look, a big follower, of course, of Noonan Boy and Australian Boxing Central and all that, and they covered it extensively. Now, I've got to admit, I don't really know who Tyson Pedro is, so forgive me if I think he's a UFC fighter or something, so forgive me if I don't know who he is, but he fought last night and looked like there was a really good crowd. And the reason I'm mentioning it is, one, because it must have been some sort of big deal if Australian Boxing Central have given it all that coverage, but he has now thrown out the challenge to guess who? Jake Paul. So are we about to have the Jake Paul circus with an Australian flavour, with Tyson Pedro putting his hand up to fight Jake Paul? I'm not going to give it too much coverage either guys. I hate talking about Jake Paul, but I wanted to just mention Tyson Pedro. It was a 7th round knockout. I didn't see any of it except just for a couple of highlights on the Australian Boxing Central page. But yeah, we'll keep a lookout for him, because what I saw him, he actually didn't look too bad. There's still a long way to go, and look, even at this early stage, I would probably think, even as much as I don't rate Jake Paul at all, I think he might just be a little more advanced than Tyson Pedro at the moment. I don't know. From what I saw, still a little bit raw, like a lot of UFC fighters are. But let's not forget, Jake Paul loves fighting UFC fighters. Fighters that aren't really proficient with their hands or defense or footwork, and he gets them doing in that way because they're obviously just not well trained in those areas. So we will keep an eye on that. Little bit of good news, some real good news. It looks like the Olympics are confirmed to be at the LA Olympics in 2028. Now, we all know that's been in the gun of the Olympic Committee, and they actually ran the Olympic boxing in 2024. And now it looks like the world, or what's just called world boxing, fronted up by Gennady Golovkin, they have done enough apparently to confirm that the Olympics will be on in 2028. Now, the thing I would expect is that it would be very, very closely monitored by the IOC. They will be probably looking for any excuse they can to throw boxing out. I think the World Boxing, I don't even know what to call them, as an association or whatever it is, the World Boxing body, amateur body, has done enough at this stage. And I think they did a really good thing by allowing or recruiting someone like Triple G to front it. He's a clean skin, very, very well spoken, got such a huge amount of respect in the boxing world, was a great amateur as well, don't forget. Very, very good character. So I think the fact that they've got him to front it is a very, very good idea. And it's probably given the IOC some confidence that it will be run properly, because over the years, and take it from me as someone that boxed in the system for, 15 years, and at that international level for about 8 of those 15 years, it's not, or wasn't great. It wasn't a great environment. And look, I know most sports around the world, major sports, would have the same issues. It's everyone chasing the top spots in the organisations, all looking for the trips and the junkets, whatever they are, and just status. They're all after status. They all want, the gigs on the committees and everything else. And again, I'm sure it's no different in athletics or swimming or whatever, gymnastics, whatever it might be. But in boxing, it's always just had a little bit of a nastier edge to it. It's just one of those sports. It just attracts people who just seem to want to do the wrong thing to better themselves. So, but look, it's great news. As a former Olympian myself, I am absolutely rapt that it will be back, and I'm confident they will do a very, very good job, and Olympic boxing will continue for many decades to come. So that is some good news. Now, speaking of, just before I mentioned Daniel Dubois, Alexander Usyk, it looks like that fight will be in June or July. Now, I said the other day, well, there's smoke, there's fire, and it looks like, I'm trying to give Daniel Dubois the benefit of the doubt, but apparently a week or so before he was scheduled to fight Joseph Parker, Alexander Usyk, strangely, this is the odd thing, why would he say this the week of the fight? This is the big question mark, that he wants to fight Dubois next. Why wouldn't he have said that he wants to fight the winner of Parker and Dubois next? But he said he wanted Dubois, and then strangely enough, 2 days later, Dubois is out with an illness. Parker, of course, gets the job done over Bacoli, and less than a week later, it's Usyk Dubois in June or July. It's not a good look if you ask me. And if I was Joseph Parker, I would be pissed. I would be. But speaking of Joseph Parker, the word is that he will fight Ajit Kabial on the undercard in the main support, and the 2 winners will fight later in the year. So there is some good news there for Joseph Parker, but I still don't like the way they've gone about it. And yeah, not good business. But again, we are talking about boxing, aren't we? So actually, just on the whole thing with the Riyadh cards, I was thinking yesterday, if with all these great cards and great fights and everything they keep putting on, and prospective fights they're looking at for the Riyadh season, what 5 fights, if Turki Al-Sheikh said to you out there in YouTube land, here is a blank bit of paper, you're going to plan the next card, what 5 fights are you going to have? You're going to have on it any 5 cards, any 5 fights on the card right now. Don't worry about potential fights. Don't worry about fights that sort of may be locked in or going to happen or have been spoken about. Here's a blank bit of paper and a blank check, more importantly. What fights are you going to put on? The next big Riyadh card. Well, I had a bit of a think about it. My 5 fights would be, I would have Dimitri Bivol, David Benavidez, first and foremost. I'm just trying to remember these 5 fights, by the way. I would have, who was the other one I had? I had Teofimo Lopez and Ryan Garcia would be on the card. I would have Nail Inoue, Bam Rodriguez on there for sure. I would have, this is an interesting one, Tank Davis. I thought about either William Zepeda or Keyshawn Davis, and I think I would stick with Zepeda at the moment. But William Zepeda and Gervonta Davis on there, and the other one would be Bakram Murtazaliev and Virgil Ortiz. They're the 5 fights, if I had to say in it, that I would pencil in. So what did I say that I had? So Dimitri Bivol, David Benavidez, which would probably be the main event, I'm assuming. Murtazaliev and Ortiz. Teofimo Lopez, Ryan Garcia, Nail Inoue, Bam Rodriguez, and Jesus. Did I say Gervonta Davis? I did, didn't I? Whatever it is. I think you got Gervonta Davis and William Zepeda. So they're the 5 fights I would put on the card. Who would you have? If Turki Al-Sheikh slips you the paper and says, there you go, you can plan the next fight. Don't worry about the money. I've got you covered. You just write the fights down. Oh, sorry man, just getting him through the gate there, and we'll make it happen. Have a think about it, put it in the chat below. But guys, have a great Thursday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.